Hey everyone, welcome back to the Ceres podcast. I'm your host Stelios, the founder and director of Ceres. And today we have a truly inspiring episode lined up for you. I'm thrilled to welcome Peter Farrell, a man whose journey has been through highs and lows of the hospitality industry, and it's nothing short of extraordinary. Peter's story is one of resilience, determination, and reinvention. He began his hospitality career at just 7 years old, and then he went on to work in some of the world's most prestigious restaurants, including the Fat Duck with Heston Blumenthal. His career has took him around the globe, from Michelin-starred kitchens to senior management roles in Sir Terence Conran's restaurant group. But when life threw some massive curveballs his way, losing his eyesight, battling 2 brain tumours and undergoing chemotherapy, all while dealing with the loss of his brother to suicide, Peter's career and life were upended. But here is where the story takes a turn. Peter didn't give up. He rebuilt his life, founded multiple successful ventures, including Epsom Social Food Hall and Food Motion Network. That was a bit of a mouthful for me. And today, he's not just a hospitality leader, but also an ambassador for hospitality action. Peter's story will leave you inspired and motivated, no matter where you are in your journey. Today's episode is brought to you by the brilliant Ceres Natural Degreaser, your go-to solution for turbocharged cleaning. This powerful, no-nonsense degreaser tackles the toughest grease stains with ease. Without harmful chemicals, it's safer, economical, and biodegradable option for your commercial kitchen. Remember, we offer free next-day mainland UK delivery on all orders. And all you have to do is visit www.ceres.shop and take your commercial kitchen hygiene to their next level. Now, before we jump into Peter's inspiring conversation, a quick reminder. Special offers, competitions and giveaways, they all happen by being on our mailing list. Just last month, our good friend Martin Robinson won a pallet of Ceres Natural Batter Mix worth over £1,300. And we have lots more of these competitions coming up, especially during that Christmas period. The run-up as well, and probably after. We like giving back where we can. So if you want to be next, sign up today. We don't really promote competitions on our social media because it just encourages those pesky scammers. So you've got to be on the mailing list to win it. So get on it, and the links will be in the show notes. Also, take a moment to go find us on Ceres for the Ceres podcast discussion group on Facebook. There isn't a lot of conversation there because everyone still wants to text me and talk about it, but it is starting to get there. Every now and then a little bit of conversation happens, but where everyone's busy, we know what it's like. We are also going to start recording the Pod Squad episodes again. Everyone's just been really busy. Everyone's had staff problems or holidays. David Miller's on his way to Japan as we speak. So once he's back from Japan, because he's working over there, we should be able to get one of those done. Kelly's going to be recording more with us soon, and David Nicolaou's had some staffing problems. So yeah, everyone's been under the cosh really. So don't worry, they are coming back. That's an answer to lots of messages that I've been getting. We've also got lots of fresh content on our blog, including market reports for wheat, a review of Radical Candor by Kim Scott, and insights of the upcoming budget, and also lots of articles on the employment reforms. So there's lots of key information there that you should be absorbing. Now, no more talk from me. Let's get on to today's episode with Peter Farrell. Peter, welcome to the Ceres podcast.
Hi, Elias. Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
It is our pleasure, my friend. It's just good to have you on. And, I was thinking as I was writing my notes earlier that I really struggle with people like yourself, and that is because you wear a couple of different hats in business. You're doing lots of different things. There's a few personal things that have happened. So there's a lot to juggle within a conversation. And like I said to you just now, we were setting up, I try never to really follow this linear fashion. So we'll try to do it justice because, I'm not a professional. I enjoy chatting to people and learning about them. And that's extended to people. It's a bit like Gogglebox, I guess, people listening to me, learning about people at the same time. So tell us a little bit about your two business roles. We'll start there, and tell us a little bit about your day to day.
Yeah, absolutely. It's also good to hear that I'm not the only one struggling with myself. That there's other people struggling with it.
That's true.
So I have two, I guess, main focuses in business at the moment. We have Food Motion, which is a support or consultation agency going since 2019. And we generally support early stage operators. So anybody with an idea looking to develop a concept in hospitality, we can support that full process to launch the concept, to raise funding, and then to grow, whether it be organically, refining what they're doing, or maybe franchising, whatever it is. So I'm a generalist, and we could talk more about my background and how I become a generalist, but I'm not a specialist or amazing chef or manager or anything, but all I know is hospitality, and I've been in hospitality 25 years and pretty much worked in every single area of hospitality. So I have a very good understanding of all the elements that come together to make a good concept and a good business. So Food Motion, work with a lot of early stage, but some more established, some even property developers, councils, and so on. It's kind of growing as these things generally do. But we're still generally focused towards supporting the little guys, I suppose, the early stagers. So that's great. And from that, actually, it was one of our clients in 2021. So kind of coming out the back end, I suppose, of COVID. They introduced us to a landlord in Epsom who had this large site available. COVID had killed, not literally, but killed the operation there in this unit. It was 10,000 square foot site, or slightly less, sorry, about 8,000 square foot site. And we pitched this food hall model, which was obviously doing quite well pre-COVID in London. So very much like a box park or Mercato Metropolitano. So a range of different food units. We have a stage where we run events, live music, etc. A bar, which we run ourselves. And then very kind of casual, informal vibes. And then since then, so it's been going 2 years now, just over 2 years, we've added some competitive socializing. So we got electronic darts, we got pool tables, arcade machines, etc. So yeah, Epsom still takes up, and rightfully so. And it's kind of what I want to do. It's really grow venues and operate venues. So Epsom is a big focus, and now we're looking towards launching a second venue in just a bigger market and probably closer to London as well.
Yeah, it's interesting because in our discussion on the phone a few weeks ago, I was thinking about my words afterwards. I was thinking how really a few years before COVID, I think I'd probably go as far as saying before 2016, these venues, these mixed food and drink venues didn't really exist, did they? And I don't know if that's just in the UK. Maybe you'd know better if they existed somewhere else. But it feels like it's something that it's a new thing. And I was trying to think like how, in our conversation, I was thinking how I think the news came out. The news comes out about pubs closing all the time. So I was thinking, is today's public just completely sort of like, are we sort of sick of just the old fashioned going to the pub? Are we now wanting experiences? And you mentioned competitive socializing, darts and snooker, whatever else it may be. Do people want to go somewhere where they can have a game, have something to eat, have something to drink, have a laugh? In a way, it is a pub. In a way, like in some ways, because if you said somebody describe a pub, like it would be that. But this is a lot bigger venue. So what is it that I'm not getting? Because and sell it to me, because I'm not a naysayer either. I just think I've not got one near me. But I sort of like the idea of it. I like the idea of being able to sit down and have different food, because I'm a foodie, and just have lots of different food, and that appeals to me. So
I think you're spot on, Stelios. These venues, especially the experiential side, really, I guess, came into the forefront of hospitality as a very significant element of that sector. Just pre-COVID, it was like 2016, 17, 18, they started to boom. And I think, like, there's always been markets, right? There's always been street food markets, farmers markets, and going back like centuries, people gathered in town centres to buy food and drink, to buy vegetables and meat and so on. So spaces where there are food and drink from different suppliers, let's say, or vendors in a set location where people then like to come, have a choice of different things, maybe slightly lower price or direct to producer or vendor, whatever it is. And then they can connect with other people in the community. So people coming together to connect and have a chat and come for that kind of food and drink experience with their local community. So that's always, I think, been there for a long, long time at least. And I think what's happened is, I guess with all business and society, I suppose, there's lots of different factors and societal, economical things that have led to food halls becoming very attractive to people. I think variety of food options is still a big one. So people obviously there's a lot of allergens and dietary preferences, intolerance, etc. So if people come in a group having 5, 10, 15, 20 different food options with an easy way to order individually, I think that's quite attractive to people. Low price, and this kind of stresses on people's pockets. I think relatively low price compared to restaurants is attractive to people. And then, experiences really is, in my opinion, what people want more and more these days. I think it's led by social media. It's led by, I think, younger generations, I guess, feeling more comfortable when there's other things going on. So you're not just sitting opposite each other at a table and staring each other's eyes. I think it's better if you have something else to interact with at the same time. And then if it's something more special, that kind of creates an enhanced experience that you capture for social media, or you can position yourself there and show the world that you're at this event. I think all of those things are kind of feeding into these types of venues being very attractive to people today. And I'm sure it'll continue to change, as it always does. But
absolutely. Yeah. And I guess you're well placed in that situation to constantly evolve and change with the times, I'd imagine. One thing that made me think was, how are you sort of choosing the type of food vendors that you want to be working with? You said you control the drinks anyway, essentially the bar or whatever. So then how are you then aligning yourself aligning yourself with these food vendors?
Yeah, good question. And I think it's really the critical element of these venues. Number one is getting the right amount of food vendors, because if you get too many, there's too many mouths to feed in a sense for vendors. Not enough, and there's not enough choice for customers. So you need just about enough that it, I guess, satisfies what the market wants, the public wants, in terms of choice and variety of options. But then keeping it relatively condensed, I suppose, that you're making the vendors happy as well. And then what to bring in and who. We had quite a strict set of criteria. So obviously our optimum vendors, so good brands, well established, great operations, obviously amazing food, team, etc. So we try to tick as many boxes as possible. A challenge we've had in Epsom, where we're based, is that we're not London, so it's a relatively small market, not massive footfall. Logistically and operationally, for vendors who are operating in London, trying to get them out to Epsom and get their staff coming to and from there was a bit challenging. And just general volumes and revenues that we're taking in Epsom compared to, again, London, a London opportunity. When vendor has a choice between London and us, they'd probably tend to go to London. It's easier. So we've had to, I guess, compromise in some areas, but we've got great food now, great vendors, and Whether it's kind of exactly the ideal criteria, no, but these things never are. I think you have to
No.
do the best you can and make it work.
And the vendors, are they sort of there for a fixed period of time, or are they different all the time?
So we have two types of contracts. We have a 1-year short-term lease, and then we have a license agreement, which can be used as a pop-up for whatever, a month, 3 months, 6 months. And we're very flexible. I think it's good to have change in these venues and just keep it dynamic and interesting. And then obviously it doesn't work for either side. People can move on pretty quickly. So it works for everybody.
And I take it's more like, and I'm guessing here, it's more street foody food. It's like things that people can eat on the fly. You know, it's not going to put people out of pocket too much either. And also I guess it wants to be done fast. People want to eat quite fast in these venues.
Yeah, absolutely. Like our whole venue is very street foody. There are now a couple of slightly more refined food hall venues, but we're still very rustic. Like we have a concrete floor, very communal kind of picnic table style seating areas, and the food is very street foody. Mostly disposable packaging, some crockery and plates and trays and so on. But very, very rustic, very kind of artisanal in nature, all very fresh, obviously, and cooked almost in front of you. And then also very quick as well. So yeah, absolutely.
If the room was, or your venue was packed from side to side, how many people could you get in there?
So we have a capacity of 220 inside, and then we've got 2 licensed areas outside. One for maybe 30, 35 people, and then we have the large square in Epsom Square, which could probably hold about 50 people or so. So I guess we could push it to 300.
Yeah, that's interesting. What sort of age group would you say is your target age group for your audience?
A good thing about these food halls, and it's kind of anti-marketing talk in a way. We don't. Well, I guess we could have a specific avatar, if you like, in terms of our exact demographic. But these venues really do attract a range of people. So in the mornings, we tend to have a lot of mothers, some fathers as well, but mostly mothers and babies come in the morning to get together. Mm-hmm. The space is great for kids to run around. Again, very casual, very informal. Then it moves into local workers in the afternoon, some students. So we got the UCA, so University of Creative Arts in Epsom, a couple of other colleges. So we got students, workers, and then into the afternoon, again, it's kind of workers, kids coming from school to play pool maybe. And in the evening, it's maybe a younger crowd, especially weekends like Friday, Saturday night, which actually are our busiest days. We have a younger crowd and it's a little bit more drink focused. But it's a range of different people.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. So I guess like on your peak weekend, it's like you say, it's drink, probably some bar snacks, maybe something light, but mostly drink heavy, I'd imagine. So, or drink, which is good. Yeah, and then there's music, I take it.
So our split is about 50-50. Used to be a little bit more food, but it's kind of leaned towards drink a little bit more. And we do music Friday, Saturday night. We do open mic one Thursday per month. I think it's the first Thursday a month. We do quiz night every Wednesday, which is quite popular. We get people coming back week on week. And then there's things like draw and sip. So these kind of art classes. There's crochet classes. There's Zumba classes.
Oh wow!
There's all sorts of things going on. So it's a great space with, again, stage and the PA system with big screens. So we're very open to people using the space for a range of different things. And it's genuinely community focused. That's the very fulfilling thing about it, to be honest. It's really an attractive venue for lots of different people, different types of businesses, entrepreneurs, etc., to use in the community. So it's good.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of Roxy Bowling or Roxy? I guess it's a cross between bowling and sports bar, to be honest. And we take our kids quite a lot. And when we're in Bristol, we visit Bristol and we go there. And I could see we end up going there just to play bowling. We end up, watching a football match and having a pizza. And again, I think it ties back into this experience thing. And I think that I'd imagine that when someone came up with this idea and said, hey, I want to do this mixed venue, I can't imagine lots of people got it. I think a lot of people would have been a bit like, I'm not sure I get it. But yeah, I don't know. There is something appealing when you're multi-generational to be able to go somewhere like that and just have a laugh. But I think, I guess what I'm trying to figure out is it here to stay, do you think? Like, is it something that's going to be in and out? But I'm not sure it will be. I think experiences there are a thing now. I think people want to really have fun. And, well, even if it's not fun, they want to be doing things as a group, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I think it's similar to what we were saying about markets. Like, is it a new thing or has it been there a long time? And games, like, obviously, it's a very natural thing for humans. We love playing, and as kids, we're finding games all over the place, and we love it. So it's all it is really games, food, and drink, which are so fundamental.
Yeah.
I don't think will ever change or go away. It's always going to be there. It's more just, I guess, the package of those and how they come together to create that, I guess, overall experience, the bigger experience. And then kind of the model, the price point of that, the model for the vendors within the venue and so on. So, yeah.
What would you say vendors, what would you say, if we're just looking at the food vendors, what's their biggest struggle operating within that environment? Would it be too little people for the amount of food, or would it be, because a friend of mine, he's in one of these places in Southport. I think it's maybe operated by Southport Council. And he does Greek food, Greek street food. And he mentioned that it is a struggle sometimes when he's forced to open early and no one's around. And, but he has to do what everybody does. That's the whole idea. And it's a bit collective in that respect. So everyone is sort of winning together and then struggling together at the same time. So what would you say that the biggest problems or the biggest challenges that you have to deal with in order to support the vendors?
Yeah, it's without doubt the biggest challenge is that you have to collaborate and you have to be part of the venue, essentially. You're there physically, you're there legally, structurally, and it's a bit of a kind of a push and pull type of thing going on.
Yeah,
we've got 6 different vendors. Obviously, they're competing in one sense. So we as the venue and the vendors as well are bringing people into the venue, and then the individual vendors are competing for that trade when they're in the venue. So there's a natural kind of competitiveness there, which is healthy in a big way. But then obviously each individual vendor would tend to kind of push the lines and try to push as much as they can, which is natural as well.
Yeah.
But for us, like as a venue, I've always had the venue hat on. I'm always thinking, well, what's best for the venue? Not for any individual vendor. It's more what's the bigger proposition, the bigger offering for the customer, and then kind of filtering that down to the food and the drink, which we run ourselves. The venue has to come first. And then just trying to be fair, being fair and being reasonable and having quite clear, look, we have a menu policy. So what dishes can vendors have? We have an approval system. Each vendor can have a signature dish and no other vendor can do that. So it's trying to create it as clear, as transparent as possible. And then obviously we make decisions at the end of the day and that's that. But there's always going to be that friction there. I speak to other food hall operators. There's always friction in between vendors, and then between vendors and the operator. I don't think that will ever go away, to be honest.
No, and it probably, and it is difficult, but it probably allows for that creative discussion, even if heated. It means that, if you're all challenging all of those different sides, then that probably has, you'd hope, beneficial outcomes. We recently supplied a load of fish and chip vendors in Troon when the golf was on. And behind the scenes, it was amazing how everybody just got on. Like, there's loads of food vendors, there's thousands of people. And there was a few, don't get me wrong, there was a few that I met that were a bit like, I do what I do, I'm not helping anybody. But there was one guy in particular that I met that he would help anybody. He'd jump on the forklift to go and, help somebody get some stock off. And I think he just said, look, we're all here anyway. We're going to compete. We might as well just get on while we're doing it. And I just thought, he's probably going to do really well, that guy, because, he's genuinely trying to make money, which everyone else is, but he's also being helpful. And I think the event organisers really appreciated him because he caused no friction for them.
And you're right. I think those types of people who are positive and understand the structure and the type of venue or setting that they're in and are looking positively at it, they tend to do the best, and they tend to get, I guess, supported, hopefully in a fair way and reasonable way, but supported most. So it's definitely the best way to go about it.
Bear in mind, I was with this guy for 10 minutes,
Sure.
So it's not like I got to figure out his whole life story. But one thing that he said to me is, I chose to be here. So he knew what he was walking into, and whereas a few other vendors were whinging about it, but they also chose to be there. And I think, and the organizer just sort of said that you knew what you were walking into. So, and I get that, and I guess that's the same with you, that you laying out all the facts ahead of people to sort of agree if they want to do it or not. And once they're in, you hopefully then play the game together. So you all win.
I kind of see it as like a recruitment process. So I generally see it that we are a team. We're one venue, and again, it's venue at the top, and then we have a team within the venue. So like any other restaurant, and we recruit or engage vendors, hopefully as close a cultural and a brand fit and a mindset fit as we possibly can. We then have our own kind of brand documents and vision documents and so on that we explain to them. We have our food hall regulations, we have our policies and so on. So that kind of frames what they can and can't do, and just generally how we do things around here in terms of culture. And then you allow a little bit of individual personality and expression from each vendor in terms of their brand, obviously their menu, the people, which we want to encourage and give confidence for people to show their personality. So it's a fine line, but I think for me, I see it as a one big team with slight differences, and then we're trying to just guide everybody in the same direction. But it's easier said than done. I think it's always
absolutely.
a challenge.
And if it was easy, everyone would.
Yeah, sure.
So, what foods do you have at the moment?
So we have pizza, we have gelato, and a few other desserts in that. We have Malaysian. We have an Indo-Mex, which is relatively new. We have a Caribbean, and we have a meat concept. So burger, steak and chips, loaded fries, that type of thing.
There's a gap for seafood there, isn't there?
Do you know what? I didn't tell you this before we met, but I actually trialed the fish and chips concept. I know you're into your fish and chips. We trialed the fish and chips concept ourselves. So we actually operate the pizza ourselves. And we trialed the fish and chips concept ourselves, but it didn't work. In
what way?
So there was a fish and chips takeaway in Epsom, in the heart of Epsom. I think it was there for a few years. They closed. And we thought, considering the size of the market in the UK for fish and chips, we thought there would be demand for fish and chips in the food hall. So, in particular, because this takeaway closed. So we launched. It was good. I wouldn't say it was the best fish and chips in the UK, but it was definitely of good standard. We had a chef consultant. I'm a chef as well myself, and we had a decent team. Very simple menu. I think we had a cod and a haddock, and very standard type of menu, done well. And just people weren't attracted to it. We branded it reasonably well. We had some artwork and it looked really cool. But people didn't go for it. They were going for Asian at the time. They were going for pizza, which they always do, for burgers, which they always do. And fish and chips is just not something that people wanted in the venue at that time. So we tried for 3 months. So it's interesting.
I could imagine, given the foods that you've just said, like that. I don't think I'd want fish and chips either myself there. And I think I know over the years, I know a couple of people that opened a fish and chip restaurant or takeaway inside like big not supermarkets, big food halls, like in shopping centres. And the fish and chips always seem to do less than the Burger King, less than the McDonald's, less than the Asian selection. And I think it's because it's the demographic. I think, and also they can have fish and chips, and probably decent fish and chips, every night of the week from anywhere else. So when you're out and you're thinking, oh, you know what, I'll have some pizza. We'll share a pizza, and then we'll have some gelato, or we'll have some Malaysian. I'm just looking at the foods that you said, and I think like, I'm having a burger, a really fancy burger. And that's not to say that I wouldn't ever fancy fish and chips in that environment, but I think I'd dress it differently. I'd go for a different look about it, and I think I would probably go for, smaller fillets, maybe a thinner chip, maybe go crispier chip. I'd probably go for seasoned fries, I'd probably move away from the tradition side of it, because they can have that, like I said, from millions of great well, not millions, but thousands of great operators in the UK, and I think that probably it's a home feeling for them. I'll have fish and chips at home or at a nice restaurant or something, but in that communal sense, I think I'd probably stick to like these things.
I wish we had you before we launched that. we learned the hard way. But it's a good thing about these food halls. Again, you can launch for a low amount of capital. You can trial something very low risk, no base rent. So we just charge a percentage of revenue, and you can close and you can change things around, try something else. And it's a great testing, validating, kind of safe place to fail, to learn, to develop. And I've no kind of shame or disappointment. I'm glad we did it and we learned a lot, and sometimes you just have to do it and figure it out. And
absolutely. No, it's just, you've got to do those things to, like you say. And I'm one of those people that I wouldn't have listened to anybody before anyway. I'd want to learn it, even if it failed. I'm just that type of person. Sure. I learn by my failures, and a lot of times someone will say to me, I did tell you so. And I was like, but I needed to know. Like I had to do it, because, and I think, I also learn from other people's mistakes, which helps. But I think sometimes you just got to do it. And but and it's weird because I think a lot of the time, a lot of people think, well, why wouldn't fish and chips work? The market is big, people like it. But I really do think that the setting really, it matters. Fish and chips in pubs is one of the biggest sellers. So which is again, is that because you go to a pub, you expect to have a pint with a pie and maybe fish and chips and I think it's just
sometimes you don't know, and it could even be the position within the food hall. So we're in the corner unit. Maybe it was on the front unit. Maybe it might have changed the perception, or who knows. It's sometimes.
Do you ever get like your traders say, "Oh, I'd like to move unit." Oh, really? Okay, so that's a regular thing. So do some people perceive that some units are prime?
Yeah. So we kind of it's a big square unit, but we have two entrances and exits. Okay. So there's a unit on either side that faces the entrance, which people would perceive as a better unit because it has more visibility and it's the first one that people get to when they walk into the venue. Also, one of those ones has a double frontage in a way. So there's kind of two sides that is open. The other one just has one front side that's open. So there is definitely that perception. It hasn't really translated exactly to sales, although that corner unit actually where the fish and chips was tends to struggle a little bit. I think, I don't know, it could be something to do with the footfall and how people see it or they walk by it or something, I don't know. Again, it's like the high street. Sometimes you're just on the wrong side of the street or two doors down from where the footfall stops. Or it's one of those things.
So from a consumer point of view, like I come in, I sit down, and then I choose my food, and then do I go up to each one I want to order from? Or is there an app, or is it? It's not table service, I take it, because that would be a bit too formal. So
it's not table service. However, you can order through both of those ways. So you can go up to each individual vendor or place your order over the counter. You get a buzzer, go back to your table. Then when each buzzer goes off, you come up and collect your food.
Okay.
Or we have a QR code. And we use Square, the EPOS system. So QR code, you order from all the vendors, and then you get a text message or a notification saying your food is ready, and then you go up and collect. And then the bar is slightly different. You order and you pay, and then you wait, and then take your drink. So it's more of a traditional bar.
Okay, so the bar is more of a bar, and then the other food is just like hybrid system going off there. So I take it you guys handle all the money. So so the vendor, you take the money as like your EPOS system, and then you divvy it out accordingly.
Correct. So we just take a percentage of sales. They're actually okay about it. I think the big thing from the vendor side is there's no base rent, so there's no risk.
Okay.
We also don't take any deposit, and we don't take any fees, so like entry fees or anything. So it's super, super low risk. If you come in and you do zero sales, you've actually paid us nothing. It's only when you start making money then there's a percentage. So the model for vendors and the risk level is really good. But from our side, I guess to retain that control, which is important, I think, from the operator and the venue side, we only accept card payments through Square, so there's no cash. we take it all, and then at the end of every month, we'd make that calculation, and then we pay back the remaining amount. So we retain the rent, and we pay back the remaining amount. So it works. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, do you, like, as a venue, do you stipulate any sort of like moralistic or ethical stipulations? So, for example, are you saying, you need to have a vegan, you need to be allergen free, you need to do this, you need to do that, or how far would you go? How would you balance that?
That is a fine balancing act. It's again tricky. My approach, and I'm probably a little bit on the softer side, and I tend to say yes, definitely more than I say no. I try to allow vendors, and I try to support vendors and guide them and give them insights about the market and feedback that we're getting. I maybe highly recommend as a gluten-free option. Vegan, I think they need to have, or at least vegetarian, they need to have. So there's some elements that is a must-have, and then there's other elements where we recommend, but we don't dictate. And then the important thing from our side to maintain consistency and respect amongst vendors, and again, that overall venue offering, is that we have to approve every single menu item, including the price, how it's presented, the crockery, etc., before it goes onto the menu. And we update the till on their behalf. So they can't sell it unless we approve it, and then we update the till. So that control, I think, is critical, because if you allow vendors, and in their bestest nature, but if you allow them to do what they want, it may even sell, but it may not result in an overall venue offering that's attractive, or even cohesive, or balanced, or whatever, like a kind of in line with what you want. So it's important to have that control. And then again, it's explaining that to vendors, and then you can't make everybody happy all of the time. So there's always going to be people disappointed and moaning and pushing for something that they can't have. And maybe sometimes they don't even understand that they can't have, even if you explain it.
Yeah.
So it's a fine balance. But again, I tend to give as much flexibility as possible. Let them be entrepreneurial, let them trial things and fail or succeed, whatever it is. It's kind of the point of this as well. But there has to be some structure around it. I think that's important.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I guess it's important to customers, that you are using, sustainable packaging. Let's say most of them are now anyway. But I guess it's just important to show those customers, especially if they're that way inclined, that this is what we're trying to also do. And also, you don't want to have this competitiveness. If someone's got a smash burger on the menu, you don't want another guy to just do burger.
Exactly.
I guess that's a bit too close.
Exactly. Yeah. I won't talk about specific examples in episode, but
no, I can imagine. I can imagine. Yeah. Like, and I think the point is, though, if I'm just using this as an example, but if you've come in as Malaysian, and all of a sudden you want to have steak, and that doesn't mean Malaysians don't eat steak. I'm not suggesting they don't, but I guess it'd have to be a pretty Malaysian tasting steak to be on the menu, wouldn't it?
Yeah. It has to be. It has to fit into their category, into their general brand they're offering. And some vendors, and again, naturally enough, as entrepreneurs, they see another vendor selling a lot of whatever, I don't know, ice cream or a lot of steak, and they want to put on steak. And that's a good way of thinking. But then we, as the venue, have to control that and have to protect the other vendors' sales as well, to an extent. But it's a bit kind of conflicting in some way, or challenging, let's say, because let's say if somebody's selling a lot of steak and its steak sales have shot up, we as a venue then should be leaning into the market for steak. So people are coming to the food hall for steak. So it's kind of the more steak options we have, or maybe another steak option, at least could be, let's say, one more option. It's leaning into that a bit more, and it's giving people what they want, which makes sense as a business. But then again, you have to protect vendors. You have to have a range of options and maintain that kind of, I guess, again, dynamic range and world cuisine style of offering. So it's a fine balance that's never ending.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think? You mentioned you want to open another place. What would you say is the hardest thing you've learned that's going to help speed up that place? You're obviously going to learn other things when you open another place, but what do you think is the thing that's going to help you the most that you probably struggled with doing number one?
Size of the market, number one.
Yeah.
We were one of the first. So we were the first food hall in Surrey. And there's lots in obviously Manchester and kind of different cities around the UK, quite a few in London. But we are in a relatively small town. There's only 80,000 people or so in Epsom and Ewell in that borough. So it's a relatively small market. On the positive side, again, it's genuinely community focused, and that's great. And we bring the community together in various ways and support the community, which is really cool and unique. But I think for us to grow the business and to support vendors more, to make a bigger thing out of this, we need to go into bigger markets and more prime locations. And then it gives you more options to do different things and to have more vendors, more events, and so on. So definitely the size of the market. And I think high streets are changing continuously, and they're really struggling in a lot of places. So getting that right location, the right site, where the footfall still exists, or at least we can attract them to that location, that's like super, super critical.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, it's interesting. So with your other hat, your the consultancy side, let's say. So if someone comes to you, they've got a great idea. Let's say it's a fish and chip shop in this instance.
I'm very experienced at fish and chips.
So you sort of take them through the motions. You help them find the money. What do you see? What trends do you see on that side? What sort of foods are coming through that you think, all right, this is something worth backing? I know you're probably backing enthusiasm and people's ability more than the product itself, but there must be a pattern emerging to some degree.
In terms of style of concept, or
style of concept. Yeah,
I think Asian is doing very well at the moment. Mexican is doing very well. So there's a concept called Boojum, actually come over from Ireland. And they're opening quite quickly and doing very well. But Asian, from even our own experience in Epsom, but myself understanding the market, it's very attractive to people. I think there's things like noodle concepts are doing really well, like walk and go, walk to go, that type of thing. Simple concepts, so concepts like buns from home, which came out of COVID. So very simple, low operating costs, low staff skill requirements, low fit out costs, footprint for sites, etc. So very slim models with attractive, simple offerings. They are doing well at the moment. And it also just de-risks it from an investment point of view, for internally, or even raising funds through debt from the bank or through equity fundraising. Kind of those slim models with low risk can scale quickly. Those are very attractive at the moment and doing well.
Yeah, I guess if you're not spending 300k on equipment and fit outs, then you could probably scale up quite fast. Whereas, I think a lot of this is where my head sort of spun a little bit when it came to street food that become fixed sites, because they're all about trying to get as much volume as they can within the footprint they've got, but also trying to keep staff ability down so they can focus on other things, maybe being chirpy and happy and trying to, because that is a skill itself. So they're trying to, they don't want them thinking about, is this over 70 degrees? Was it there for that long? They want to try and remove all of that, de-risk it, as you said. And another friend of mine's got a meat and bread concept. I can't remember exactly what cuisine it is, but he said that he's buying the meat pre-cooked and he's just warming it through on a griddle plate. And he said, no one is having to worry about, am I getting anybody sick? It tastes nice. It's soft when you eat it. It obviously, leave anything for 20, 30 minutes, it's going to go cold. But if you eat it in that moment with the sauces and the chopped veg, it's nice. And I think in our industry, the fish and chip industry, the equipment usually costs a lot more. You can serve a lot more people, but the equipment does cost a lot more. Like, a fry range will put you back £60,000 before you've done anything else. So I think, and that can be said for pizza to some degree. Pizza ovens can be very expensive.
It's just very risky at the moment. The whole industry is very risky. And again, society, communities, how people connect, how they're spending their money, high streets, there's so much change. And kind of everybody's saying it. It's kind of, it's ongoing, but there really is a lot of change, and that results in high risk. And then high risk means it's harder to get money. And just even as an entrepreneur, business person, you should be very, very careful and try to reduce the capital you're putting into something, i.e. reduce the risk as well, until you can test, refine, validate, and then slowly add to it and slowly build in a low risk way.
And I do wonder if this is why the likes of these Asian concepts do well, because the broths can be made off site. You bring them in, you get them hot, obviously, however you're doing that. Add your noodles, add your protein. And I feel like you're halfway there. I'm not trying to make this sound really easy, but I'm just simplifying it for the sake of the conversation. Yeah. But, I think that, that you're sort of assembling as such, whereas you're not actually, cooking is done off site to some degree. And again, if you only need, a few bits of equipment, you're not spending your 60 to 100K for fit out. And I think
absolutely, and staff are so hard to find. Skilled staff with the right mindset, personality, genuinely kind of hospitality side of them. It's very, very challenging, especially outside London or big cities, to find and keep those people for a decent, let's say, feasible salary or pay rate. So that's become quite challenging. So I think anywhere where you can de-skill, make things very simple. Central production kitchens are great if it's feasible, obviously, as a model, if you're doing the volumes. And again, it kind of de-risks and simplifies, and means then if and when it does work, you can start scaling quicker and I won't say easy, but kind of easier and more efficiently. So I think it's been very clever with how you do it. More than ever, I think you have to be just so precise.
Well, if you've got a central production unit, it's a bit like a hub and spoke. You can have quite a lot of spokes coming off that hub. And if it just means you've got to prepare 10 times more of something to go to 10 different locations, that site could probably do it. Whereas, at the front end, at a shop end or a retail end, you probably couldn't be able to scale up like that. And also you're paying a premium for that spot too. So do you want to have an extra 100 square meters, 200 square meters to do preparation? You probably wouldn't.
No,
really.
So this, I think, well, I've been in business, I don't know, 7-8 years now. And the biggest thing I've learned is that you obviously have very limited resources as a startup. And I'm only one guy in my team, but most kind of founders or teams of entrepreneurs is a relatively small team. So your resources are super tight in terms of brain power, time, money, and so on, focus. So it's so critical to work out and decide what to focus your resources on and when. So, for example, production kitchen or scaling up those central resources, or even having like an operations manager or HR manager or whatever it is, I think it's critical to do at the right time and using the right amount of budget for that thing when you actually need it, not too long before and not after, or else you're going to miss the boat to an extent. So, as a production kitchen, I would generally advise it could make sense depending on the concept. Like say site 2, you could get a slightly larger site and use some of that as a production kitchen. And that feeds site 1 and then site 2 and site 3. And then when you have site 4, then you get a bigger off-site production kitchen. So rather than going all out in a production kitchen when you've got only one site or 2 sites, there's a high risk there. You kind of slowly add and slowly build. And again, it just de-risks it. And you're focusing your budget, your time, your energy step by step. And then again, that's sensible, I think, these days.
No, absolutely. We've you mentioned staffing and how hard it is. We've got a budget in about a month's time. What's your thoughts on what they could do, the government could do? They spent a lot of time in opposition. You'd think they've got a few answers, hopefully, a few things up their sleeve. What do you think they could do to help hospitality and business in general?
I've been harboring on about this for a few years now. I think business rates need to be completely overhauled. As we said, high streets are struggling. Retailers are closing left, right and centre, even like Oxford Street in central London, Bond Street. Big high streets are struggling. And then smaller community towns, villages are really struggling in a lot of places. There's obviously exceptions here and there, which is great. But I guess the other side of that is online is booming, and it has for 10 years. So the Amazons, online shopping,
Yeah.
it's easier, it's more convenient, and it's cheaper, essentially. So all of the incentives and the attractions are for people to order online, and it's just going to get more and more efficient and cool and experiential even. And that's the way the world is, and it's the way it's going to develop further with AI coming in and so on. So I think people want to come to towns. They want to connect as humans. We want to connect to each other. We want to feel surrounded by people and get out into the world. We're not digital species. So the problem at the moment is that the incentive is all online, and the incentive or the business model is more efficient online for businesses. So the result is retailers or food service hospitality venues on the high street have to charge more online because their costs are higher, because they've got rent, rates, all the other costs, etc. It's higher cost to run. So my theoretical solution, easier said than done again, but a big help and I think shift that the government could facilitate is that if they flip the business rates from the high street to online, and the result generally could be that if it's more expensive to order online, it's cheaper to come to the high street. I think that is a big incentive for people to actually get out of their chair, go to the high street. And if it's cheaper to do that, I think a lot of people will do it. And then they also have those benefits then. They feel good when they're there. They'll realize the other benefits of it. And they'll reconnect with each other, with society, with communities, etc. And then high streets will develop and they'll start flourishing again, with obviously other elements going on as well. But I think business rates is such a huge cost burden for high street and physical operators compared to digital, which is pretty slick and pretty efficient these days. Yeah. So that flip would work for me.
Well, there's two things. So we have an expert coming on the podcast the day after the budget. He's a business rates expert coming on. So we're going to unpack the business rates, because he does suspect, he doesn't know, like anybody, nobody knows unless you're in government, but he suspects there's going to be something there for business rates. And either way, if there isn't, we'll just unpack why there should be. But ideally, we're hoping there is something to unpack. Yeah. One of the notable things I found with business rates is that the notable amount of people or businesses that don't pay it, even before we get to your big industrial businesses that do pay it, it's insignificant to the likes of Amazon and so on. But I remember doing research for an article last year on business rates, and I know it's a devolved government, but Scotland alone have 8 different categories for you not to pay. Wow. And you think, well, there's a, and it's probably valid, but there's a disability business persons fund. There's a new business fund, a hardship fund. I'm just thinking there's all these reasons why not to pay. And I'm thinking I can't help but think, and I know this is one devolved nation, but if everyone paid, couldn't it be cheaper? Because if 7 out of 10 companies aren't paying, someone's paying, so they're obviously picking up the tab, and it's venues like yours and bigger restaurants like Wetherspoons and Wetherspoons get a lot of stick. Yet they pick up these big old venues that are usually listed and they fix them up and they're paying business rates at top whack. And so I don't want to be sitting here defending the likes of Wetherspoons, but it is weird how even over here, there's, again, so many small businesses. So I was chatting to a fish and chip shop owner. He's got a single site. He doesn't pay business rates, but he said, we definitely need reform. And I sort of said to him, well, if you push for reform, you will end up paying rates. And it didn't occur to him, not mocking him, it just didn't occur to him that actually he was already not paying because he's got small business relief. So, and there's probably thousands of little Chinese takeaways, sandwich shops, you name it, all over the country that aren't paying business rates. So I do think, even if you just, in a simple fashion, just for retail, if you started from scratch and everybody paid it, then it would have to be cheaper, because you think, well, everyone's paying it now. Charity shops are paying it, and charity shops are businesses, regardless of what people think. They are businesses. So, it baffles me that nobody sees that as a real obvious sign that there's so little people paying it, and it's left to the big boys to pay it.
It's obviously a very complex system.
Massively.
So it's easier said than done, like you say. I think, like, I had a site at a restaurant just off Carnaby Street in central London, and I was only 1,100, 1,200 square foot, so pretty small site. We were paying, I think it was rates, and then there's a central London charge. We're paying like 70k a year, and we were a quick service concept, so I don't know, average spend of £10 or so, and it just cripples you. You have to do so much volume just to cover your property costs. So rent and rates were like 200k in total. It's mad. So you need to be doing a turnover of 2 million at least just to make the model work.
Yeah.
And then I think like the margins on fixed sites are just so slim now. Where online, generally, they're a lot more healthy. So there's more space there to take the rates from one side on the physical side and put it into the online, and it can still work as a model.
I think so, because if you're online, pretty much, you've got a lot more efficiencies, that you can work to. So you could still be, very competitive, I think. And I think what this government or any government needs to focus on is that what is it we want our society to be like? Do we want people to go out to eat? Do we want them to enjoy themselves? Do we want that people to build social bonds? And I think sometimes the answer is probably they don't.
Yeah.
But no, I think deep down, maybe they do, but they just don't think. Because also you've got then opposing policies like, VAT is quite high in the UK, and you've got minimum alcohol taxes, and Scotland's been toying with their minimum unit price, and I do think these are all opposing that. So everyone talks a good talk about, we want people to go out and enjoy themselves and have fun. Well, I think if you tweak those taxes a little bit as well, the fact that, again, you can go to a supermarket and buy beer at a lower tax rate than you can from the pub or the bar. So that encourages people sitting at home and drinking lonely or having parties at home. So again, I think there's other policies to some degree that the government probably work
and again,
on.
it's very complex. Like what I do know for a fact is that the hospitality physical model, the financial model, is just so tight and so slim and super risky. And there's places failing all over the place, from the independent cafe through to the fine dining restaurant and everything in between, because the margins are so slim. So you don't get something absolutely spot on, you're tending to fail. So there's just no flex there. And online there is flex. So I think something the government can support, and then I think technology and just operators and entrepreneurs will find ways, I think, as they always do, to make the model continue to work in some way. But government, to answer your question, government should be thinking to try to make that model work again, make that financial model have a bit more flex, a bit more scope. And then it'll feed into what you're saying. I think probably I agree deep down. I think as humans, we all want community. So politicians as well, if you call them human, they also want connection, and they want to build communities and bring people together, even for themselves in their own selfish ways. So I think it is deep down there, but to do that, the businesses that are in the communities, and even not-for-profits and whatever makes up a community in terms of offerings, it's beneficial if it's supported by government as well.
Yeah. Have you spoke to anyone within like your network or people that are sort of like your vendors or anybody, or people pitching ideas to you about the budget, and when the Labour do end up putting up, well, not just Labour, but the current government, shall I say, end up increasing wages for like over, because the promise that they're going to increase wages, that goes in line with low pay commission. That'll be approximately, I think, I'm just trying to think of the article I wrote last week, anywhere from £11.88 to £12 an hour, and then there'll be the rumour is, and it's probably not a rumour anymore because I think they've pretty much told low pay commission to do this, but they'll be getting rid of the 21 plus. It'll just be 18 plus. So 18-year-olds and onwards will get essentially £12 an hour, give or take. Has anybody within your networks mentioned that sort of breaks their model a bit?
I've heard more about the 0-hour contracts. I've been to a couple of conferences, hospitality conferences recently, and people tend to be talking more about what that could look like at the moment.
Yeah.
Obviously, the industry generally works off 0 hours. It looks like it's going to be an option, so you have to propose it to employees. Because there are obviously a lot of employees who like the 0 hours. They want the 0 hours because it gives them flexibility. If they're students or whatever, actors or whatever they are, if there's something else going on, or they just like the flexibility. So it's definitely going to make it more challenging, those 0 hour contracts. We'll wait and see what exactly it is. The pay, again, it's just squeezing the margins. And without doubt, well, again, there's already a lot of certainly restaurants and cafes and food and drink operators failing. I think it'll just increase that failure rate and just make it even more difficult. Unless, again, it rebalances on the VAT side, on the business rate side or something. Or technology, maybe AI or robots are going to come in and save the day. Who knows? But something has to happen with that model in general to make it more feasible and attractive for people to do.
Yeah, I just don't see them having the appetite to do a wholesale reform. I think they'll deal with one or two things, but
yeah, you're probably right.
I don't know. I'm just thinking of like the last government and the one before that, and I just feel like nobody's really willing to actually deal with the whole thing, because I think to some degree it's a thankless task. I think if you change something and you pee off more people than you please, and you want to get voted in on the next term, you're not really going to do it.
It's very short-term thinking, right? As always.
Yeah, absolutely it is. Yeah, absolutely. They're just thinking about short-term issues and how they can get in power next. And that's all of them, not just the guys that are in at the moment. All of them.
There was a policy in Ireland, obviously I'm Irish if you haven't guessed at this stage, where they lowered the VAT on drink. I can't remember the exact figures. I think it went from 13.5 to 9.5 or something like that, or 9-ish. And it was, massively successful in terms of supporting operators. And what has happened since they've removed that incentive, if you like, is that, again, so many are closing daily. And again, every single level of the sector are closing. So it's that, 5% margin. That's the difference between survival and not survival. So,
it's weird because the all governments would argue, well, people need to drink less, they need to be healthier, they need to do this, and I do think that's why some of these these taxes won't ever be lowered. Lowering, I don't know, if you lowered VAT on fish and chips, pizza, or hot food, that would essentially increase purchases, providing everyone dropped the price, let's say, or kept it the same for the next few years and didn't increase their prices. So then the government would be like, well, people are now eating more junk food. I'm doing quotations for anybody listening, because they'll term anything that's not home food as bad food, unless it's really posh food. And then you think, well, they're not going to do that because they would see that as not penalising, making more people eat worse food in their terminology. So, or drink more alcohol. And I think, they're now, I don't know, I just don't see this government doing that. I'm finding it hard to formulate my words because they're all there in my brain, but I just think the government's going to say, no, people need to be healthier. I read a quick article this morning. It says that they might even introduce something that tells pubs that they've got to close early. And I'm thinking, well, if you're from Ireland, we're from the UK, I would imagine that they're two very heavy drinking, stereotypically places within the world. I would imagine that today you drink less than your dad at your age.
Yeah,
I'd say in theory, providing there wasn't anything serious.
So my dad doesn't drink.
Oh, okay.
In general, yes.
In general, what I'm getting at is that today's generation of people drink less than the last generation of people, and the last generation of people, I would imagine, drink less than their, let's say, our grandparents' time. And I think, so how far do they push these policies? How far before they keep saying, oh, you shouldn't eat those biscuits, you shouldn't eat those fish and chips, that pizza you should definitely not eat. And I know they've got a national health service to balance too, but
it's a fine balance, isn't it? It's a fine balance. Like I said at the beginning, all I know is hospitality and food and drink. I'm not a politician by any means, but people, I believe, want hospitality. They like hospitality. We always want to enjoy food and drink. I think that'll never die. We want human experiences. We want to come to connect. And we want fun, social places to go with each other as humans. So kind of very fundamental. And hospitality is certainly the main sector that provides that to society at the moment, and has always done. And there's a lot of other areas of society. I don't know. And again, I'm not a religious person, but church used to bring people together a lot more than it does today.
Absolutely.
Community, whatever, halls. So there was other things throughout history that would bring people together to connect, and that has just been diluted. People moving online, but hospitality is still there. And it's because of the food, the drink, the experience. The price point is still accessible, and the model just about works. But people clearly want it. And then there's the debate about health and how much control should you have over people's choices on food. I think there should always be some element of indulgence, and people have to make their own decisions. And some indulgence is good for the brain, good for the mind. I think in the right doses. So there has to be options there. So yeah, it's a fine balance, but fundamentally, again, I would argue that hospitality for us as a society, human race, however deep you want to go, we should as a society try to support hospitality as an offering to help us all as communities and to live happy lives, which is what it's all about. So I think that's key to it.
Yeah, and no, I agree. I can't disagree with any of that. And I think, I do think hospitality is needed. It's wanted. We all enjoy it, all in different forms. We all enjoy different forms of hospitality. And so we should. I think that it shouldn't be penalised. It should be encouraged. I think that if people want to spend their money going out and having fun, then they should be allowed. I don't think we should be telling people, well, that's got 600 calories, you can't eat that. I think, although it's going to have more, whatever it is going to have more than 600 calories. So,
but then thinking back when I was let's say late teenager, early 20s, it probably would have done me good for somebody to say, stop drinking it so much. But again, I'm Irish, and that was definitely the culture, 20 years ago. So,
but I just think again, it's like, how far does anybody go? And also, we're not going to listen to government. The more they press on it, the more we're going to want it. I think, unless they raise taxes and make it, really unaffordable, like they have with cigarettes, essentially. And I think that is a real good case of where, I agree with that, because that does physically kill you. Like, whereas, but I don't know.
Look at prohibition. It didn't work,
it just went the other way, didn't it?
So,
it made many people in Ireland rich and Scotland rich, but
exactly. So I think people will always want to drink as well.
Yeah,
and we should. It's great, and it can be very even beneficial to the health. Like there's lots of polyphenols in red wine, as an example. There's the studies proving that it's good for you. So I guess health warning there, but
I think everything in moderation. I think whatever it is, whether too much of anything is bad for you. Like so I think if you're having a couple of drinks a week, enjoy it. If you're having a steak once a week or whatever, a pizza once a week, enjoy it. You've worked hard, but I don't know, we've just got to be careful with the talk at the moment where it's, very sort of authoritarian. I'm not a big fan of that, if I'm honest, but we've got time. Let's see what they say. And, but one thing I wanted to sort of delve into a little bit was, and it's sort of you're not a project as such, but a side thing. You've become an ambassador for Hospitality Action.
I have, yep.
What's the reasoning behind that? Obviously, I'm not trying to poo-poo that. It sounded so negative. No, give me some reasons, or like why is it you really wanted to get into that?
Yeah, so interesting personal story. So 10 years ago, I was working with Terence Conran, and I started losing my eyesight just out of nowhere. So the only symptom I had, and I guess very long story. We could be here for hours, but I was diagnosed with 2 brain tumours. Out of nowhere. So I was 30 years old, actually had the first chemo on my 31st birthday. after brain surgery to take a biopsy. I had no other symptoms other than my eyesight, but I was technically blind when the first chemo started. Before that, I was kind of in the height of my career. I was a 30-year-old flying. I was super fit. I was an operations manager in hospitality, and I was super excited about the future. My personal life was relatively stable, and essentially my life just tumbled down to rock bottom and almost down to my deathbed, essentially. The two tumours were inoperable. So one was in the crevice of the top of my head, and one was at the front of my brain, but pressing on my optical nerve. So surrounded by nerves. So super risky, well, kind of impossible to operate. Touch wood, I was very lucky in terms of the prognosis. It's a very curable type of cancer that I had. And it went away after maybe 4, 5, 6 weeks of chemo. We continued on for another 6, 7 weeks. I think I had 13 rounds in total. But that was, looking back now over the last 10, 11 years, that was actually the relatively easy part of cancer. I would always, and thanks to my loving family and my upbringing, I was always very positive, and I still am. So when it hit, and once I got the prognosis, I was positive, and I said, let's get through this, I'll be fine, out the other side, and let's crack on. When that didn't happen, so after chemo, when obviously cancer hits most of us these days in some shape or form, or we know somebody with it, chemo, for me anyway, absolutely destroyed my body, destroyed my brain in a sense, my mind. So physically, mentally, psychologically, it wiped me out completely. So I had a range of symptoms from extreme fatigue. I was sleeping 20 hours a day for months, if not years. Massive brain fog, physical issues all over the place. I developed food intolerances, which is a serious pain in the ass for me. I struggled psychologically to deal with it, digest what happened. I had PTSD, and it took me a long, long time to, I guess, rebuild and just take step by step and just get the elements of my life and just me as a person back together again. And in my personal life, in terms of my relationship broke down. I also lost my brother, unfortunately. So he was an alcoholic and ended in suicide, very sadly and very shockingly. And that happened just really as I was early stage recovery as well. So I guess it's kind of like buses, like everything came at once in my life, and personally, professionally, everything just stopped and actually rewound in many ways. And I found myself with severe anxiety. I could barely string a sentence together. I had some very kind of what I felt was embarrassing moments where I couldn't communicate and went completely against my identity and who I was in my own head before this hit me. And it was a hard time. But yeah, I guess a lot of people get through this. You just keep going step by step. And it's taken me actually 10 years, or let's say 9 years, to get to a position or a stage where I'm actually comfortable talking about it, even happy in my head in terms of what happened and where I'm at, and to find out a way to, I guess, heal my body, heal my mind, work with the intolerances I have. And I've tried everything from obviously NHS, who are amazing, but also natural medicine, acupuncture, meditation, you name it, I've tried it. And probably everything else works to some extent. But I've had to really go and rebalance my body again and rebuild it from scratch, essentially. And
what are your intolerances now?
I've got a yeast intolerance, which is the big one, and that's it's obviously in the obvious, like breads and pastries, but it's also,
how do you eat pizza?
I can't. Well, I take antihistamines. So if I go out for a meal, because vinegar is one as well, and white wine vinegar, wine I can't drink, beer I can't drink. So if I go out for a meal, I take a pack of antihistamines. I have cheat days.
Wow.
And it's getting better, and I'm confident, which would hopefully it'll go away.
Do you hope with that little bit of exposure, maybe you're tricking your brain? I know you've got antihistamines to sort of back you up a little bit, or you just...
It's hard to know. It happened after chemo, and I was again, well, minus 2 tumors, I felt very healthy, and I was very fit, and I was energetic. I was working a lot, but I certainly hadn't got any issues like that. It's got a lot better. And I think I mentioned the fatigue there at 20 hours. I think a lot of that was down to intolerances. So even now I have yeast to some large extent. It gives me fatigue and brain fog, and then even breathing difficulties, and that leads into anxiety. So I had that multiplied by 100, like early stages of chemo. So my whole body is just very, very slowly got better in all ways, including the intolerances. And I've tried like the elimination diet, which can work. So stripping it out for whatever. I've tried like 3 months, even 6 months. So stripping it out pretty much 90-95%. And then I'd test it and kind of maybe have a cheeky pizza or a cheeky beer or something. And it's getting better, but it's still there. I still feel the effects. And certainly if I have a pizza and a beer and a pastry the next morning, I'd be feeling it that day, I think. So I have to be careful and just slowly reintroduce it. And then, hopefully it'll be good.
You've really been through the mill, haven't you, really? You've really been sort of like pushed, like, you know, mentally knowing that you had that cancer prognosis, and, you know, then not knowing how that was going to go, and then obviously beating it. But then also you probably feel this sense of elation. I'm just guessing because I've never been through any of that, but I'd imagine you feel this sense of elation that, I'm going to be fine now. And then you've been going through this,
it's very strange. It's hard to explain, and I guess everybody's different. I'm sure they are.
Absolutely.
For me, it was just I really struggled to digest what happened. I didn't know whether it was like this massive thing, or whether it was just something that 50% of people will have cancer. So I didn't know where it was in my head. I couldn't place it. And then all the physical, mental, psychological things that went against my identity and really inhibited me in performing as me.
Did that surprise you, though? Did that take you by surprise that you felt the way you did, if that makes sense?
It was a big struggle. And I kept saying, well, next week I'll be fine. Next week, next month. And then a frustration built that I wasn't. And then to answer your question, I think it's more relief rather than elation. I think it's now I'm finally, I feel different as any person 10 years older would, but I feel good and I feel grounded and balanced and confident and I feel kind of more like me. Before it was like, well, I'm me, but I'm not being me, if that makes sense. It's very hard to explain. It's so weird in the head. So it was so frustrating and so embarrassing, maybe shameful to some extent. I know there's so many feelings, and you're struggling with your hormones as well. So now I think, again, yes, the Hospitality Action, who are amazing, by the way, massive shout out to them. They do amazing work for hospitality employees generally, but anybody working or with hospitality businesses. They're a not-for-profit charity, and they do amazing work. So I reached out to them a few months ago to see if I could support, see if I could give back, inspire, whatever it is, tell my story to help them and maybe to help others going through what I went through or something similar. So I think it's more, I guess, me being able to do that myself now. And then obviously I love this industry. Again, it's all I know, maybe giving back to it in some way at the level I'm at now and the stage I'm at and what I've been through. I just thought it'd be a nice thing to do.
Oh, absolutely, because there might be someone else out there that feels just as, disjointed as you did, and it's a really dark place sometimes when you're going through something and you just don't know the way out of it. So having someone else who's been there, even if it's slightly different, just to hold your hand, to listen to you, to talk to you, bounce some questions off, I think that's a really good thing. It's an honourable thing to do.
I think the biggest thing I should have done and didn't was to reach out to more people earlier. And I think it's a common thing for humans to do, probably in particular men. And from speaking to Hospitality Action, it's just trying to get people to speak and to reach out for that support, because it's there. The help is there. And I didn't even tell my friends, like my friends in Ireland or even friends in the UK who I wasn't like super, super close with or working directly with. Because I thought, well, I'll just get through this. I'll be fine. Then I'll tell them I don't want to worry them. I don't want to make a big thing out of it. I don't want to feel like I'm weak or whatever. There was lots of different reasons for that. But then I struggled. I really struggled, and I needed the support, but I wasn't getting it. I wasn't asking for it. So it was only when I did start slowly. I went to Maggie's, who were amazing. Had some psychology sessions. I again tried everything and anything, and then I completely flipped because I realized finally after years that actually that was what was helping me. It was other people and other specialists and mental, psychological, physical support people. So I think as early as possible, whoever's going through whatever in life or in business, whatever, I think there's so many people there who are willing to support, and even for free, and just go and get it. There's no shame and there's no embarrassment. There's actually it's such a positive thing to do, and that is how you will get better. You'll be better as yourself, and in a better position to move forwards and get stronger. So that's the big learning that I had, at least.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're better. Hopefully you carry on that trajectory. It must have been difficult as well, going through the loss of your brother as well. Like that is that's horrendous. I'm sorry you had to go through that. Yeah, it's hard.
Again, I think very sadly a lot of people go through it. It's a very sad, very shocking, especially for my mother, who was actually found him, but for any mother, any parent to lose their child, it's really, it shouldn't happen, and it's such a deep trauma, and just very, very sad. And I saw him, well, obviously growing up with him, I saw he had some challenges and some issues that just progressively got worse over the years, and then I could almost see that he just couldn't deal with it anymore, and he actually thought it was better for others around him, because he was actually the nicest guy on earth and such a caring, soft, sweet guy, and he just couldn't handle life. He couldn't handle what was in his head anymore, and he thought it'd actually be better for the world if he wasn't there anymore. So it's incredibly sad, and
it is. It's very sad because it's not true.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's not true for anybody. It's
and again, it's speaking to people if you feel like that.
Yeah. No, definitely. But we are going to finish this on a high note, because you are going to open new locations. You are going to hopefully carry on that trajectory, and hopefully, being an ambassador really helps others too. And I think you can't really, you can't put a figure on that. That's really important. Then that carries on. And if we can ever support you in any way doing the ambassador work, we'd love to help you. We have our feet in hospitality. It's more so fish and chips, but also some hospitality. So yeah, we'd love to help.
Amazing.
Where we can.
Thanks very much, Dennis. That's great.
Well, Peter, thank you for your time today. And it's been great. I've really enjoyed talking to you. And maybe we can have you on again in the future, and we can see how the state of play is.
Absolutely. Thanks very much. Good to speak.